Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome on in to the Diverse Leadership Collective. How's everybody doing this phenomenal day? Listen, I want to welcome you on in. We are live. If you're rocking with us and you're watching us on LinkedIn, I want to encourage you, go ahead, share the feed, tag a friend, and let them know that the Diverse Leadership Collective has come on. We want to enrich lives today, man. We want to empower leaders, and we want to help you navigate your week successfully. Um, Man, I'm connected today with some phenomenal people. I want to turn this thing over to Miss Janice. Janice, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, and I certainly hope everybody else is as well. I am Janice Allen Jackson. I am the principal consultant with Janice Allen Jackson and Associates, where we provide services to local government and nonprofit organizations. We are here today to have a conversation about uh, leadership, change, and how to manage through uncertainty. And we are bringing in an expert in that area who is Dr. Carole Isom-Barnes. But before we get started with Dr. Barnes, I would like for everyone else on the panel to introduce themselves. So if we could start with Ms. Bridget Brown Jackson, and we will go around the room.
Hey, everybody. My name is Bridget Brown Jackson. I am a behavioral wealth strategist, a former leader of multi-million dollar organizations I used to lead for 17 years. And I am so very excited to be here today to talk about this so that we can empower our other leaders. I'll pass the mic over.
Dwayne.
Phenomenal day, leaders. My name is Dwayne Roberts. I'm a male empowerment coach, podcast host, and speaker. Man, I'm passionate about leadership and empowering leaders to become the best version of themselves by seeking self-awareness and becoming their authentic leadership person. Phenomenal day to you.
Awesome. C. You're on mute.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I actually am a holistic professional in personal alignment coaching and consulting and aim to bridge the gap between personal aspirations and professional obligations.
Awesome. Nanika?
Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Nanika Cregwell. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today. I am one half of the founding team that makes up Russell Cregwell Consulting, where we specialize in all things HR. You name it, we can do it. We've handled it, startup, small business, large business, global. So if you have a need, human resource operations, whatever it is for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got over 45 years of combined experience. And so I'm sure there's something you need that we can help you out with. So great morning to everybody.
Awesome. And Gary?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Glad that you're here. After 30 plus years working with seniors as an attorney and in the C-suite in continuing care retirement communities, I'm now the founder and CEO of Unleashed to Lead, where I help people unleash their gifts so that they can fully live and lead. You know, the hardest person to lead is yourself. And I know that's true for me. And then it's only when I'm leading myself can I lead others effectively. So I'm writing the book soon to be released, Come Out of Hiding, The Joy of Living and Leading Unashamed, Untethered, and Unleashed. So thanks for joining us.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to reading that book, Gary. Without further ado, I do want to go ahead and introduce our speaker. As I went through her bio, it's one of those things where I met somebody on a personal level and didn't have all of the details about their professional accomplishments. So we're going to talk about her a little bit professionally so that you all can get familiar with her background. She's going to lead us in a talk. She's going to give us about 10 or 15 minutes of nuggets for us to internalize, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. We do invite anybody who's listening in LinkedIn land to offer comments. So please, if you have questions about anything that is said, if you want to add any suggestions or topics to the discussion, please do so in the comments. I also want to add that this is our first gathering of 2024. We had a few of these back in 2023, and we have decided that we want to start doing this on a monthly basis. So the Diverse Leadership Collective will be back. Please stay with us for all of 2024 for some of the great things that we're going to talk about related to organizational leadership and how we can all get better. With that said, our guest today is Dr. Carole Isom-Barnes. She is president of Experience Leadership LLC, which is an organizational change consultant with Fortune 100 senior leadership experience in human resources, operations, risk, and strategic planning. She's done management. She's also a former Bank of America senior leader and has done extensive research on organizational change at the practitioner and the educational levels. Dr. Isom-Barnes is also an assistant professor of strategic communication at Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she teaches graduate business and organizational communications courses. In addition to that, she is the author of Layoff, American Dream Interrupted, Capturing 3 Years of Corporate Research and Unemployment Disparities, Employee Insight, and Personal Perspectives, a publication in collaboration with the Urban League of the Central Carolinas, Inc. And also, she has a PhD in leadership and change and a master's degree in organizational communication. She is also Six Sigma certified in process management and performance improvement. I happened to encounter Dr. Barnes through our mutual membership in the Mount Carmel Baptist Church of Charlotte. And that is what I meant when I said I met her as a person, as a church member. She shared with me she was writing this wonderful book, and I read the book. It is absolutely awesome. The book is available on Amazon. If any of you would like to order that, it's an excellent read, and it is just so insightful in terms of what happens to somebody who is facing a layoff and the personal impacts as well as the organizational impacts and considerations involved with that. So thank you so much, Dr. Isom-Barnes, for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, especially on a topic that's so dear to me and that I'm so passionate about. So thank you. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. And I am truly excited to be here and just have a conversation about leadership and uncertainty in the real world today. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. And if you could, there are a few questions just to sort of put this conversation in context. I will let the audience know what those are so that they kind of know where you're going to focus your talk today. And then the floor will be yours. First, we were thinking about organizations, and obviously you work with a number of those that are experiencing uncertainty around the size of the workforce, i.e., do we need to do some downsizing, organizational culture, how to become more effective and efficient, and what kind of mistakes do you see organizations make as they encounter those things? Also, we want to cover the impact of uncertainty on employees, which is one of the major topics of your book, Layoff. And also, as you talk through those issues, please share with us some best practices for handling uncertainty for leaders and their impacted employees. So the floor is yours with those questions in mind.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, I will say, at a certain age, the memory cannot remember all those questions at once. So you may have to reignite some of those questions as I speak. Okay.
Sure.
But, when you think about, businesses and you think about the 2024 job market, we're in a transformational state. Not just businesses, but also with jobs. And a lot of this has to do with, global, economic downturns, shifting in the market, technological changes as well. And so this is just par for the course. This is just always going to be an issue that leaders in businesses deal with on a regular basis. And so they have to expect this. They have to expect that there's going to be change, in as much as employees should also expect that there is going to be change. And so because of this, you have to be prepared for this constant change. And one of the things I know that you asked me earlier, when it comes to uncertainty in the workforce, what are some of the things that organizations do, some of these common mistakes that they make? And I think one of the first things that comes to my mind is not having the right leaders in the organization, or they have the right leaders, but they don't have them in the right roles. And what that means is if you fall into one or both of those categories, the leader is going to be uncertain. And if the leader is uncertain, obviously that's going to trickle down into the workforce. It's going to trickle down, to the workers. And so now it's trickling into your culture. And when it's trickling into your culture, it's going to manifest itself in ways such as absenteeism, apathy, lack of engagement, high turnover rates, and you will just see it. Maybe even some unhealthy competition with the workers, and so that's when you know that you have an issue and a problem. And so the first you're starting with your leaders. You got to have the right leaders, because without the right leaders, you're looking at that trickle down effect. Now, if you find yourself unprepared for change, what some of these organizations can do is go back, take a look at the leadership. Which leaderships need to be shifted, moved around, developed, moved up, or quite frankly, moved out of the organization. Then you also want to look at your missions, your values, your goals. Are they all in alignment? And are you striving? Are your goals and where you're going with your organization in sync with your mission and your values and your alignment? And if they're not, then you want to start working on a strategic plan to turn things around. Now, maybe as an organization, you have the resources internally that you can do this, but sometimes organizations might have to, bring someone in externally to help them, with that. But especially in, uncertain times, you want to make sure that your foundation is strong, and that is always going to start with your leaders. The second mistake that I think I see organizations make during uncertain time is not recognizing that their employees are their most valuable resource, that the employees are special to them. And if you think about yourself and you think about your own life, if you will, anything that you value, anything that you consider very special to you, you take care of that because it's important and it's special. And I think oftentimes, especially in uncertain times when people are very stressed and they just don't know what's going on, you forget that these employees are very important. You forget that this is a transactional relationship. I come to work, you pay me, I come to work. And even though it's a transactional relationship, you cannot treat it like that completely. You have to treat it as if it's a special relationship. Yes, I come to work. Yes, you're going to pay me, but I also want to be treated with respect. I also want to be valued in your organization. I want to be treated as I matter. And one of the first things organizations will do, unfortunately, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of change, in reducing workers, is that they will cut things like training or certain benefits. And that's really, truly one of the worst things that you can actually do, because this is where you really want to foster continuous learning for the growth in your organization, because as you become leaner, you also want to make sure that you have the right resources and that you are remaining competitive, and you want to retain your best employees. So I will stop there, Janice, and just ask, what other pieces am I missing that you would like to talk about, or even just address within the realm of what I've just discussed?
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I know it's hard to say because each organization has their own reasons, but as you hit on that second mistake, that of not recognizing employees as a valued resource, why is that? I mean, that would seem so obvious that you can't get anything done without your employees, why do sometimes leaders not recognize how important it is that they are treated with respect and offer training opportunities and some of the other things that you discussed?
I think because, many organizations today, because they have become lean and they look to get leaner, you have your leaders doing multiple roles that maybe, 20 years ago, they might not have been doing. The supervisor may have only supervised years ago. Now the supervisor and the leader is also a worker, right? So they're not the person that just sits in the, the beautiful office as everyone else does the work. They're working. And people are overworked and they're tired and they're stressed. And when people are tired and stressed, they're not really necessarily thinking of those type of elements in the workplace. You want them to think about that, but they're so overworked, they're so stressed. They know that's what they should be doing, but they're not able to really give that because they're really tired and stressed from being the leader and doing leader work and just the demands that comes with the level of responsibility that they have.
So they're just so overburdened by
Oh,
their own stress that they kind of lose sight of what's going on around them.
I would say that that's a big part of it. The other part of it is you do have some leaders that, again, they know it's like I said, a transactional relationship. I pay you to come to work and you come to work and then I pay you. Case closed. And they forget that, yes, it is a transactional relationship, but these are human beings. They forget that element of it. There are some leaders that feel like I pay you to do the job, just do the job. And they forget that empathy and concern and that people have things going on in their lives that sometimes they can't bring 100% to the job without support from the leaders, without support from the organization. And we saw that during COVID, right? So people are working from home and now they're managing, children who they have to school during the middle of the day or get them set up on Zoom while they're trying to also be on Zoom for work. And so, you have to understand that element of your employees need support. They need empathy. They need the organizations to recognize them as people who have needs. And when people's basic needs obviously are met, right, they're going to be better employees. And it really all is going to depend on the culture. I think some organizations do this better than others, obviously, but smart organizations recognize the power and the value with their employees, and they will do what they need to do to support their employees so that their employees are not just better people, they're also better employees, which in turn allows them to have be more competitive and bring in more customers, increase revenue.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And as you talk about the smart companies, what are some of those characteristics and best practices that the smart companies utilize to ensure that they can handle these periods of uncertainty in more effective ways?
Well, I think smart companies are first and foremost, um, you know, they make sure that they have the right leaders in the right job. And so that's first and foremost. They're going to do a better job of hiring people. They're going to continuously evaluate their processes, right? So are we efficient? Can we be more efficient? Are we effective? They're also going to empower their employees. They're going to let their employees have the opportunity to be leaders, regardless of what level. Oftentimes, as you know, people think leadership is a position. It's not a position. So you can be, the janitor and have some leadership, authority. And so you enable people to be empowered within the organization so that they feel part of the organization as a whole. But I think in addition, they're going to mitigate risk. They're going to be more proactive. And so when you evaluate your processes, when you are more proactive, and you're looking at some of the risk that potentially could happen before they happen, it reduces and mitigates some of the uncertainty within the organization. I think also having a contingency plan. If you look at change as something that is constant, then you know it's going to always happen. And if it's always going to happen, it's important to have a contingency plan in place. Or you're always planning, not always planning, but you have a plan in your head for any type of crisis. So what happens if the economy is a downturn in the economy? What's our contingency plan? Is this going to be a crisis for our organization? And you are flexible and nimble enough so that you can ebb and flow in these turbulent times and it doesn't take you out. I think also being transparent with your employees is very important. This is where we are. This is what we're experiencing as an organization. And talking to them, listening to them becomes extremely important. A lot of leaders don't listen to their employees because you got to figure the workers are the ones who are in the trenches. And when they are in the trenches, they are seeing something and seeing things that you may not see from your 10,000, purview. And so they have great ideas. They know what's working and what's not working. And if you listen to your employees, if you empower them, a lot of times they have some really good ideas about what challenges the organization is facing, and even some really good solutions that can mitigate some of that uncertainty.
Excellent. Panel members, do you all have any questions you'd like to pose for Dr. Isom-Barnes?
You grabbed my question, Janice. I was about to ask her about the smart. When she said smart organizations, I'm over here taking notes.
Yes.
Dr. Carole, I'm over here taking meticulous notes. Listen, when you talked about the smart organizations, I was like thinking about, the design of the smartphone. When I first became a leader, decades ago, we didn't have these smartphones, had that BlackBerry that couldn't do all the stuff that it can do now. And so as smartphones can do limited things, so should smart organizations. And so you asked the question, what should that be? And so that was mine. I was just sitting there like, oh, I want to ask that question. And then you asked the question. So great minds think alike. But can you unpack that even a little bit more, Dr. Carole? Like you talked about that evaluating your process and definitely empowering employees. That's the piece that I love more than anything. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like give us like a real life scenario or something that people can do in real time that's real easy and quick.
Well, I think the first thing that you can do, many organizations, the work that a worker may have may impact the work that another department has, say, for example, right? And so look at how efficient is that happening? Do you know what my job is and why my job is important, or do you just know your job? Because if you know what I do and why my piece is important, that may impact how you do your job. You just can't operate in a silo. And so again, that also comes back to training and learning as well and empowering your employees. But if I'll just take it from I mentioned a janitor. I'll just take it from a janitor level, right? So from a janitor level, if I'm the janitor and my job is to simply come in and empty the trash cans and maybe mop the floor, but I go in and into one of the restroom areas and I see where maybe there's flooding. If I don't feel empowered, if I don't understand the nature of the work and the business, I may just say, hey, I empty the trash can, I mop the floors, I'm ignoring that flood over there, right? And then I may not know that someone major important is coming in to that organization that day, or that, this could cause someone else to get hurt because maybe it's a hospital, maybe it's an OB/GYN area. Someone's going to come in, slip and fall, and that's a lawsuit for the organization. But if I understand the big picture, if I feel empowered, I, as the janitor, may call the plumber, may elevate that situation so that everyone is safe. Because my job as the janitor is not just to mop and clean, it's also about safety. And so it's about everyone understanding each person's role. It's also about looking at, you have these processes, are they still efficient? You have performance and processes in place. Laws, regulations change. Does this still matter? If you have a policy and procedure department, are you going back and looking over if you're a large organization, your 5,000 policies and procedures that you have, are they still efficient so that your departments are operating effectively and efficiently and legally? And so these are the type of things that I'm saying. And, do you have the technology to transition the policies and the procedures from one department to the next to keep up with the demands of what you need to do legally? So that's what I'm saying. Go back and look at that, because these are the things that mitigate risk in organizations.
And I love that, Dr. Carole. And Janice, if I may just jump in with a question. I mean, one of the things that I hear you, it's so important psychologically to know that we belong just as human beings, and that we belong in the workplace, and how our role fits in. I know there's a story about President Kennedy was, visiting, before he issued that challenge that we're gonna land somebody on the moon before the end of the decade.
Yes.
And there was you were mentioning a janitor. There was somebody in the housekeeping janitor emptying the trash, and President Kennedy stopped and asked the person what they did. And the person said something to the effect, "I'm helping land a man on the moon."
Yes.
And I thought, what a powerful thing. This was someone who was empowered in their sense of self. As you're speaking, and I'm looking forward to learning more from you, particularly from your book, Layoff. But, one of the things that's hard for companies to do, they think if you hide the bad news, that's a good thing, so that you keep people positive. Well, how silly is that? I want to know, what's the deal? Is there an anecdote or a story? I mean, as you've studied this, a company that has given the potential of bad news so that people, to your point, they know, they're empowered with knowledge. They're empowered with knowing what is really going on, because if they get the hint that someone's hiding, fear is bred. And we all know from the work of Brene Brown that, if fear is in the workplace, that's the antidote to creativity and innovation. I mean, you're just keeping your head down and trying to survive. Can you, is there a company that you can think of, or an anecdote where bad news or potential bad news has been shared and in a positive and productive way, what that looks like?
Yes, I'm going to give you both, where it was shared and when it wasn't shared. And when it was shared, I know of an organization, and they were facing, reductions in force. And they pulled people in the conference room and said, look, this is what's going on. Sales have not reached what we had hoped, for the year. And we're going to have to lay off, one or two people. And, they were very transparent. And actually what the employees did was, there was another employee that was within the organization, and that person was dealing with an illness. And some of the employees got together, and what they decided they would do is that they would all reduce their hours and work part-time, so that this one particular person actually did not get laid off and could continue and have her benefits. And that was a culture where they were thinking about, not themselves, but they're thinking about, how can we, save money for the organization and enable this employee who was ill to continue to work, and that employee remain full-time and receive the benefits.
Wow, that's a great example.
So that's one example. On the opposite side, I've seen a scenario where the organization, and I see this actually a lot, where the organization is not transparent that they're going to do, reduce the workers, but people know. And here's how they know. You start seeing people going to, meetings, and you see certain people going into meetings. They're very closed door meetings. They're very hush hush, or certain people are not included in those meetings. You see little things start being eliminated in the organizations, like we're not going to do this, we're going to cut back on that. You start seeing other leaders take other positions. So you might see one person, you think, okay, no biggie. 2, 3, and then people they can see it. They can see it manifest itself physically. It starts happening, and then they start to know something is going on within the organization. And then little by little, the rumors start going. And then when the rumors start going, it impacts engagement. People stop contributing to the organization. They stop working because partly they're worried, but then they're also expending their energy looking for another job, sometimes on work time. And so I think those are 2 examples that, that I have seen, the good, and the bad.
Those are great examples. Thanks for that.
We have a question from the audience too, as well. If you could address that, Dr. Carole. King says, what happens when the leader is not receptive to change, no matter how great the training and advice is?
When the leader is not receptive to change, meaning that the leader does not want to change, or the leader is not receptive to change within the organization. But I'm not sure how to.
I'm assuming he's saying not receptive to change, even if they're getting the training and they're getting the advice to do some change. It's the leader that's not willing to change him or herself.
Got it. I think in those situations when the leader is not willing to change as an organization, I always say you either manage them up or you manage them out, because you cannot have one leader, dictating the culture within the organization, especially if it's negative. And so, it's the classic one bad apple will ruin the whole bunch. Well, if the leader is not willing to change and adapt to the mission, the values, the goals, the culture of that organization, I think they have to be removed from the organization. I know that sounds harsh, but I think it just has to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, King did say yes. He was asking about the leader. Yes, the leader does not. Thank you for answering that.
Hey, Dr. Barnes, my question is, how much does this responsibility fall on the employee themselves to come up on the mic and say, hey, I'm having challenges. I can use some support. I've known organizations because the employee hadn't said anything, their productivity is falling off. And now they're getting warning after warning before they release. You gave a phenomenal example of a team coming together supporting an employee, but what's the responsibility to that employee to say, hey, I need to come up and identify some of the challenges that they're having so they can find the support needed to move forward?
I love that question. Thank you. Because, as workers, we do have a responsibility, right? This is your livelihood. You are a member of this organization. So you do have a responsibility to step forward and say, hey, these are some of the challenges, the issues that I see within the organization or that I am experiencing. Now, recognizing there is a risk there. Right? I mean, let's just be honest. There's a risk there. If you're the person who's always voicing and always complaining, no one is going to listen to you, right? So you don't want to be that person. But if you're a legitimate person who has legitimate concerns, I think that you have a responsibility to bring that forward to your leadership. Now, you need to follow the proper, chain of command and do things in proper order. You go to your manager. If your manager is not responding, then maybe you go to the next manager, but you don't jump, 3, 4, 5 levels and go and address these issues. You start with your direct leader first, and you address these concerns. People know what type of culture they're in, and they pretty much know if the culture is going to be responsive or if they are not going to be responsive. Definitely, if it's a culture that is going to be responsive, it's in your best interest to say something, because this is your place of employment, and hopefully you like your place of employment. But I recognize that there are a lot of people who do not like their place of employment. But even if you do not like your place of employment, if you see issues, address it and do it professionally. You don't have to go in unprofessionally, but do it professionally. And then if you don't get the results, take it to the next level. And if you're in an organization that is not responsive, that is not in alignment with what you value, what I would say to you is find another job, because you want to work somewhere that supports who you are and who you value. And if you don't, then what you're going to experience is an unhappy experience within that organization.
Well, one question, when you're saying you're telling them to go somewhere, what are some safe places in your research, which you've done, that they can go in their workspace?
Safe places as in companies, or safe places as, could you?
In the leadership ranks, the organizational structure.
Well, I think they need to first start with their direct supervisor, right? You start to, that's the proper chain of command in most organizations. If I have an issue, I'm going to go to my direct supervisor, my direct manager, or direct leader for me. And then it depends on what it is too. Now, if we're just talking about this process needs to be, improved, that's one thing. If we're talking about, say, an issue like sexual harassment, that's a whole nother level, right? Then, in sexual harassment case or something of that magnitude, and it could be the leader, I would probably start with HR in that scenario. But for most basic performance process type issues, or efficiency or things of that nature, I would start with my direct leader. I think that's the safest, best place to start, because once you start jumping 3 and 4 channels and complaining about something, you're going to lose a little bit of, it's going to create more problems, because people, what you're trying to do may get blocked, because people will focus on the fact that you didn't follow the proper procedures in the chain of command versus focusing on the issue itself oftentimes.
Okay. And Carole, you said something really significant. You said when you realize that you're not in an organizational culture that will tolerate someone coming forward to make suggestions or ask questions, it may be time to leave that organization.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that's very poignant for me, because I was just recounting a story recently with someone describing a particular organization where I used to work, and there were hundreds of people in this organization who just showed up every day to keep their heads down and collect a check because they felt like they couldn't. It was not an environment where they could make even constructive suggestions to their superiors. And I think about what a miserable way to live that has to be. And that then speaks to just employee, does the employee become sick from going to work when they have to put up with that on a daily basis? Have you seen that happen in the workplace too?
I've experienced that happening. So let me just say that I've experienced that. I have been that person early in my career where I quite frankly, I took a job for the money, and I learned from that experience to never, ever take a job just for the money. That's what I learned from me. That was my takeaway. And I realized sometimes you have to take a job for the money, but I decided early on never to do it again. And I took a job, for the money, and it was a horrible experience. And I'm not even going to say it was so much the company or even me, in as much as it was just an alignment, because I had always worked for large Fortune 100 companies, and it was a small company. And, it's a different culture from a large company and a small company. And it's different type of lead. You're leaning on different type of leadership skills. And so I went into the company with my, Fortune 100 leadership type skills. And this company had their own issues. And I wasn't savvy enough as a leader at that time to know that I needed to shift my leadership style for the culture that I was in. So I went in utilizing the wrong set of skills in the wrong company, and it just wasn't a match. But everyone in the company, they were just, just working and just doing the job, and you couldn't really address anything with the management or the leadership. And it was just a very uncomfortable experience. I was miserable. Every day going to work, I was miserable. Every day going to lunch, I was miserable. Every day going home. And so I stayed in the company for, 1 year, and I just stepped out on faith and said, I'll just find another job somewhere, which I did, like 3 weeks later. And, but it's not a good experience. And what I learned personally from that experience was I need to be happy where I work. I need to enjoy where I work. And there's no amount of money that is going to do it for me, because you spend a lot of time on your job. I also learned from that experience that it's about the people. And you can take the worst job in the world, but if you got the best people, it makes the job awesome. And so even though it was not one of the best times in my career, it was probably the most insightful and most impactful year of my professional career, because it set the stage for who I wanted to be and how I wanted to work as a leader for the next 30 years.
Yep. I've learned some of my best lessons from the worst bosses.
Yeah.
I love what you said about that. And, and one of the things you said, Dr. Carole, is it reminded me of Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Or breakfast. Choose your meal. But culture is absolutely critical. And if there's any CEOs, any leaders that are in a position to set culture, I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. And I love what you said about, there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. I mean, fitting in implies that you've got to contort yourself in order to fit in, rather than, a company that says you belong. Now, who are you, and how can we best utilize who you are in our mission and in our passion? And I think that's so huge. And anybody can influence, no matter what the position is.
I agree. I think, especially from an employee, because I know, Dwayne, you talked about the employee, and I want to go back to, the employee having agency and ownership too, of their, professional career. I think it's very important that workers, you have to own your own career. You have to own, your skill set. You have to stay retooled. And then, we're looking at so many companies right now, especially in 2024, that have already announced that they're reducing their workforce, like Nike and, Amazon and Google. And so many organizations have already announced that. And we're only 3 weeks into, 2024. And, I have a friend, and I was speaking with her just last week. She's in HR in financial services. And she was just like, well, my company's getting ready to do layoffs. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know if I'll be able to get a job anywhere else. And I said, what? You've been in HR for over 20 years. Why do you feel that way? And she said, well, it's all been in financial services. And I looked at her and I said, but you're in HR. Everyone needs HR. Why are you limiting yourself to HR in financial services? And so as these businesses are, making a lot of these decisions, some of them because of technological shifts in, artificial intelligence, even though maybe you don't have a background in renewable energy, say, for example. And that's one of the areas that's going to be growing, say, in the future, in 2024. They still need HR people to manage the people who are renewable energy engineers. And so, I say to, people and who are going to be facing some of these layoffs, one, look at your skill sets. Does it cross other sectors and industries? It doesn't have to be the industry that you have been in for your whole life. Look at the skills that you have. Are they transferable? Put a story together. What's your narrative about your profession in your career that is not just limited to where you just worked in the last 20 or 30 years or whatever, 5 years? And also retool. Don't wait until the time comes when you're going to be, laid off, because that's just part of, a career in this stage in life, right? It's just part of work now. But keep yourself retooled. If your job offers, tuition reimbursement, take advantage of it. I know you're tired when you get off, but take advantage of that. Prepare yourself for these moments. And just like organizations have to prepare themselves for constant change, prepare yourself for constant change and take advantage of opportunities to keep your skills up. Get the certifications that you need in your industry. Network, stay connected to people in your industry. So there's so many things as employees that you can do as well to keep yourself better positioned for potential job loss and professional success, even if it doesn't involve job loss.
Thank you so much for that. And as you were talking in the last few minutes, I got a notification from the Charlotte Observer about Albemarle Corporation planning layoffs and other cost-cutting moves to save $750 million as the electric vehicle demand slows. So exactly where you started the conversation, there's so much uncertainty due to economic factors, and it could happen to anybody, anywhere. That these layoffs would have to happen. And the second thing, I also got a text message from a friend who said, I'm listening to your program right now. It's so ironic that somebody just texted me about a really toxic situation that they're going through right now. So, unfortunately, it's tough out there.
It is. And these are real issues. They're real issues that people are dealing with every single day.
I saw Nanika smile, Dr. Carole, when you said that. She's our HR guru on the panel. Nanika, did you want to say something? Like she lit up when you said, like, hey.
So I've been way quiet today. But because this is the space that I operate in, there were a couple of things that I really agreed with. And Dr. Isom-Barnes, you said 2 words that I find myself saying all the time. And so I don't have a question. I just have a statement. And it's kind of just to reinforce, support, whatever word you want to use, what you said. And those 2 words were mitigate risk. And people don't realize the level of responsibility that they have when they're in leadership roles to mitigate risk. And that might look different depending on the level of the organization that you're in. So I know when I'm functioning in my role from day to day, that's my role. I'm here to mitigate risk. You might not agree with my decisions. I'm open to your feedback. But if that puts us in a situation where we're at risk, we need to talk about that. And when you think about people who, like someone asked the question early on, well, what if the person's not willing to listen? You are not putting yourself in a position to mitigate risk, because the people who are in those functions, who are operating in those roles, if you're not listening to them and you're not willing to take their feedback or hear what they have to say, you are putting the organization, the department, the whatever at risk. And so that caused me to light up. You talked about employees leaving. That's a bitter pill to swallow when somebody says, well, if you're not happy, perhaps you should think about doing something else. And immediately people get the attitude, the defeatist attitude. No, don't do that. Retool your skills. And if you're going to stay in a situation where you are unhappy, like, how do you expect anybody right, to pull you out of that. So you do have to take some responsibility. So there was just a couple of things. Like I said, I don't even have a question because I agree with it, but I want people to remember those words that you said. If you are not in a good situation and you're frustrated and you're crying during your commute, whether you're driving, taking the train, or walking, think about what's got you there and then figure out how to solve for it. And then anybody at any level, from a leadership perspective, because that's really the lens that we're looking at today, think about what Dr. Isom-Barnes said: mitigate risk. That's your job. And then the notion, this is my last thing, and I'm gonna be quiet. The notion that people don't think that they need HR, everybody needs HR. And it's because of everything that you heard here today, because that's the space of expertise that we're in. Right? We're not here. We're not stuffing envelopes and mailing party invitations. Like, this ain't that. That's not what we do. And I think people lose sight of that. So those were probably a couple of the spots that Bridget saw me light up, because it's just those things resonate with me and I say them all the time. And so it's just very comforting to hear it come from, the mouth of an expert. You did your homework. And so, like I said, I don't even have a question. I really don't. I just had a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Nanika, as you talked about the risk and mitigating the risk, and Dr. Carole, same there, but I was thinking about some leaders are so blinded by their insecurity and toxicity that they will ignore red flags. I mean, I have seen them. There's a giant red flag on the wall, and they will bypass it and wind up paying out money in terms of litigation later on for wrongful termination and other things that they did that were not on the up and up. But somehow they get to a point where you just can't tell them anything. And I've been in that position where I've been trying to advise somebody, hey, that's a bad move. Don't do that. But they just keep right on moving.
And so, Janice, since you said that, I guess that could be a question. So maybe you could talk about that, Dr. Isom-Barnes, is when you have that, right? How do you advise people? Because one of the things I used to say to people all the time, you're not going to feel this. You're not going to see how wrong this is until somebody sues you personally. So never mind that you have the deep pockets of whatever organization you're in until your name appears on the paperwork, because we are in a litigious world. You're not going to feel it until they name you specifically. So what would you advise to those leaders, Dr. Isom-Barnes, that are, right? Maybe you've gotten feedback, you just haven't listened, you haven't been willing to make the pivot. What do you say to the person who you're hearing it, right? You know you're about to get sued, but you feel like, okay, I've got the deep pockets of the organization. How do you convince people to listen that haven't done so thus far?
It's hard to convince people to listen, right? That has to be, that's a leadership skill, and good leaders have that skill. Some leaders lack certain skills. You can't make anyone listen, but this is where it comes in up with where I talked about continuous learning and leader development. And so if you have an employee who's a, great leader, but they're not listening, maybe they need some training so that they get it, so that they understand it. But the organization has to be accountable and make the leader accountable. So accountability becomes a big issue here. If the organization is not making that person accountable, then they're going to do what they want. I had on my podcast, one of my podcasts last year, I interviewed the president of Comcast. And in that conversation, he made a statement. It kind of shocked me for a moment. He talked about how they had this leader, and the leader was not mirroring the organization's mission and their values. And so he said they just flat out fired the leader. And they let everybody know why they fired the leader. And I was like, whoa. And he said, because people have to understand that we are serious about our values. We're serious about our employees. We're serious about our mission and what we stand for and what we're not going to tolerate. And he said, and when people know that someone at a certain level was let go for, not mirroring that, then it wakes people up and enables them to see that we are serious as an organization. And so I answer your question by saying, well, actually what he said was sometimes people have to be the one that is held up as the poster child of we're not going to tolerate this. And if you continue, this is what's going to happen to you. And so it's a level of accountability. And I think it starts with the organization and the top leaders in the organization saying, we're not going to tolerate that. So if there's no accountability, people are not going to listen, and they're going to continue to do what they have always done.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. In the situations where I'm thinking about, there was nobody holding their feet to the fire, even when the litigation did take place. They just sort of swept it under the rug, and the people who were perpetrating the actions that led to the litigation would kind of, brush it off to the side. Oh, that's no big deal. They would actively work to influence how those actions were perceived, as in, somebody did me wrong. I was right about this, but they just did me wrong, that sort of thing. So we have to be extremely attentive to the full set of circumstances in order to get a handle on what's really happening, because people will try to tell us that something's happening that's not. So
can I just add, I know your time is running down, and I've taken more time than I probably should have here, but if I can just add one more comment here, just going back to a comment that Nika made in HR. And I think it's very important, and again, smart organizations are realizing this, to involve HR in the planning and in the goals and the missions and the values, because a lot of people still think of HR as personnel and paper pushers. And that's not what the job is or should be today. And so smart organizations are looking at HR from a strategic perspective and involving them as they're making these goals and decisions on behalf of the organization, because it's a critical component to leadership and the success of the organization. And so I just want to say that for any business or leader out there, involve HR in the strategy. Don't keep them in the weeds. They should be reporting directly into the CEO or the COO and be part of that C-suite in the organization.
Thank you for that, Dr. Barnes. That's absolutely correct. I see HR being minimized. You talked about paper pushers. I call it, people want HR to process their paper, but they don't want them to be involved in the strategic decision making that happens within the organization. So we are almost out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Isom-Barnes. Is there anything else you want to share? Your contact information, how to purchase your book? Please share that right now.
Certainly. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This was a joy to be here on your esteemed panel. I'm happy to be here. And this is a topic that's just so dear to me. I could talk about this for another hour, but I won't. And but you can visit my website, which is experienceleadership.com. And that's spelled XPERINCE leadership.com. Or you can contact me at Carole, CAROLE, at experienceleadership.com. So thank you so much. And the book is still available. It's called Layoff, and it's on Amazon.com. It's Layoff, American Dream Interrupted on Amazon.com.
And it is a great book. Again, I am Janice Allen Jackson. I am the principal consultant with Janice Allen Jackson and Associates. My background is in city and county management. I refer to myself as a recovering city and county manager, but still have a lot of energy and knowledge to share with local government and nonprofit organizations. We do executive search work, training, organizational development, and strategic services. And I have enjoyed being a part of the program today. I'll now turn it over to Bridget, and we'll do our closeout and get ready for next month's session.
Hey, everybody, make sure you come back. If this was really enjoyable to you, make sure you tell Dr. Carole Isom-Barnes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She blessed me. I have a whole notes over here. I love when I get in the accompaniment of other leaders, especially because they're great, because the word of God tells us iron sharpens iron, and literally she sharpened me today. My name is Bridget Brown Jackson. I am the founder of Exponential Edge Ventures. I help organizations grow and develop their teams and make sure that they keep the profits in their pocketbooks, because they have high performing teams. I'm going to pass it on over to my guy, Dwayne Roberts, so he can tell you a little bit about him, and we can move on to the next person.
Awesome. And this was great, Dr. Isom-Barnes. So impactful, great content. Like Bridget, I got a page and a half of notes, man. I want to go back over. My name is Dwayne Roberts. I run an organization called Men of Vision. I'm passionate about empowering men to develop their personal leadership. I'm a speaker and podcast host. And organizational leadership. Yep, I help organizations develop their leaders. Thank you.
Go ahead, C. Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm C. Morgan, and I help to empower individuals to align their professional and personal aspirations that help them with their obligations to business, but also enhance their life with satisfaction and holistic and productivity in themselves.
Love it. My guy, Gary Hibbs.
Hey,
world
Gary
traveler.
Hibbs and Dr. Isom-Barnes. This was fantastic. I mean, you love human beings, not necessarily human doings. And I really appreciate that. You care about people. That's obvious. And I'm the CEO and founder of Unleashed to Lead. I help people come out of hiding to unleash their gifts so that they can fully live and lead and take the 30 plus years of C-suite experience and try to help people unleash themselves.
Love it. And last but definitely not least, our Nika Craigwell.
All right. So I guess that leaves me. I'm Nika Craigwell again. Listen, Dr. Isom-Barnes, woman after my own heart. So thank you so much. Kudos to you for leading an amazing session. Gary always comes with the quotes. So I just got to put that out there. Gary always comes with the quotes. But at any rate, I am Nika Craigwell, one half of the team that makes up Russell Craigwell Consulting. We specialize in all things HR. And if you didn't get the message today that everybody needs HR, I don't know what to say. So everybody needs HR. Mic drop. Y'all have a beautiful day and a wonderful rest of the week.
That's great.
All right.
Love
Excellent.
it.
And we are the Diverse Leadership Collective. Please look out on LinkedIn. If you could follow all of us on LinkedIn, that would be great. So you can get notifications for the next time we get together for another one of these informative and enlightening discussions. Be blessed, everybody.
Yep, thank you.